Hello everyone, I've been kind of absent this week because I've been really busy, so I haven't had time to put out any new content, but I am back. I am getting back into my usual schedule, so I'm going to be releasing more content as I usually do throughout the week. So today's going to be the deck profile for Grimfaced. I promised it a while ago and I never got a chance to actually make it, so this is going to be it. To start, I'm using one Ancient Gear Dragon. Usually in a deck with Gear Town, people like to run double of these, but one is absolutely perfect because this is kind of a love-hate card where you love to be able to play it, but you hate to dead draw it. You love to be able to rely on it, but you hate having to rely on it because if it gets banished or something, or it just gets countered, then it becomes a dead card, so running one is good. Second up is Ancient Gear Engineer. This is the reason why I'm only running one of these, is because Ancient Gear Engineer is an incredibly underrated card, especially this format. I can't tell you how invaluable it is to be using right now, because there's so many players and decks that are using tons of different back row. So, say you go second, you're able to pull this off first turn, your opponent is going to be in so much trouble if they can't just automatically get rid of this, or if they don't have a strong enough monster. So this card can't be, well, it can be targeted, but if the trap card targets it, it automatically gets negated. And they can't use cards like Evac to get rid of it, so that's out of the question. They can't use cards like Mirror Force or Deep Prism because, just like Ancient Gear Dragon, when this attacks, they can't activate spells or traps, so that's out of the question. They can't Solemn Warning it, so long as you special summon it by Gear Town's effect. I can explain why, but just take my word that Solemn Warning does not work against Gear Town. So this card is incredibly hard to stop. And especially if they have a monster that you can run over, you just want +2 with an Ancient Gear Engineer, and then every turn that this remains on the field, you can potentially go another plus because you just attack again and then remove their other spells and traps. And then especially if you're running other traps of your own to keep it on the field, it just makes it all that much better. Next up is Mist Valley Falcon, and this is where the deck kind of gets weird. I've never seen anyone run Mist Valley Falcon with Gear Town before, or Ancient Gears. Now this card, it synergizes with so much, it just synergizes with most of the other cards in the deck. Usually if I'm running Gear Town, I would be running something like a double Cyclone, just so I can destroy it. And I also wouldn't be running any other fields because they kind of get in each other's way at times, but with Mist Valley Falcon, you can return, say, Zombie World to your hand if you have drawn into a Gear Town, and then you can set the Gear Town and then have Zombie World go off and use Gear Town's effect, whereas if you couldn't return to your hand, then it would just be kind of stuck there, or you'd have to be really wasteful in order to use it. It also combines well with the other winged beasts I'm using, so it lets me go into some really unique XYZs. Next up is Mizuki. It was really cool that this card came back to 3 with the last list. I was actually only planning on running it at 2 because I had made this before that list came out, so I had no idea this was going to go to 3, so that was a nice surprise. It's actually the main, well, I think it would be an engine. Yeah, it's the main card of the deck's engine because the goal is get Mizuki and Zephyros to the grave, and then use this in combination with cards like Sacred Crane to draw cards and special summon and spam and just go all sorts of plus. It's a level 4, so you can make rank 4s with it, which is really nice. Then same thing basically goes for Zephyros. You want to get it to the grave, you use it to make all of your combos go off, and it's whenever you have cards in your grave that activate, it's like you have a hand grave, which that's basically what Yu-Gi-Oh has become, that as many cards in your grave that you can activate as possible makes everything better. And next up is Sacred Crane. This is the main draw card of the deck. Like I already said, it's supposed to be used with Mizuki because you got one of these in your grave, you have Zombie World on the field, so then you can use Mizuki's effect, and this is in the grave, so you're not going minus, so you special summon Sacred Crane, and that's a free +2. Maybe you even did something with Mizuki before, and that's even more plus. So then you draw into something good, then maybe you have another level 4, so you overlay with the Sacred Crane, then you, let's say you make Laval Chain, whatever, however you pronounce that. So you make that, you send Crane to the grave to activate its effect, you send another Mizuki, and then you go +2 again. It's pretty ridiculous. Next up is Summoner Monk. There's a lot of spells in this deck, along with to help with the consistency, you really want to be able to pull these cards out. You can, of course, pull out Sacred Crane. This is an old combo, it's nothing new, but it's still nonetheless very good, that you discard a spell to get out a monster, and then typically you go for an XYZ. And usually that would be kind of minus, because you're discarding a spell, and then you're overlaying 2 monsters for 1. So to the very least with this, you're not going quite as minus, because you're still drawing a card from Sacred Crane with Summoner Monk's effect. It also helps get Mizuki and Zephyros to the grave, so it's all around just really good. Then there's triple Mirror Force. Oh, by the way, I'm only running 2 Sacred Crane. I was thinking about 3, but it just felt like too much. There was just no need for it, whereas these 2 cards, you want as many as you can, so 3 fits. I would probably be running a 3rd Summoner Monk if that was possible. So, moving back to Terraforming, there are a lot of fields in this deck, so just to make it more consistent, I'm running 3. Gets you whichever ones you need. Then also triple Duality. This is kind of a combo based deck, and you also need grave setup, so it's very important that you have high consistency so you can set everything up as needed, and that's exactly what Duality is in there for, just to get the card that you need. And then triple MST, I don't really have to explain that, lots of back row this format, so triple. Then Super Polymerization. This is the trolliest card in the deck by far. I've had times where an opponent actually summoned a Quasar Dragon, and then Super Polymerization just gets rid of it. This is also incredibly good for maybe you're minus, but your opponent doesn't really have any life points left, and you want to go for game that turn so you don't lose. As long as you have 2 monsters on your side of the field and a card in your hand, you can use this to make an extra push for 3,000 damage, because you're using it in tangent with Dragon Necro, which I will get to later, but it has 3,000 base attack, and that's a lot of damage at times. Also, you're using it in combination with Zombie World, and that's really the main reason for it, is you make all of your opponent's monsters into zombies, and you use Super Polymerization to actually fuse them together. And you're not going minus from that, you are basically going 1 for 2, because okay, you get rid of 2 of your opponent's monsters for the price of 2 of your own cards, but then you get 1 card back, whereas they don't, so it's +1. And then this card is just really annoying to deal with sometimes. Next up is Garetown. Naturally going to be running this at 3, whereas Zombie World is only best at 2 because it doesn't get an effect when it's destroyed, whereas Garetown does. So if you have triple Zombie World in your hand, you can't do anything, whereas if you have triple Garetown, then you can actually do stuff. It's not dead, and that's why I'm running this at 2 and these at 3. And then Garetown, it just special summons both of these. You can special summon them from the grave, so they're not really ever gone until they get banished. It can get you out of some pretty tricky situations, and otherwise it just combos well with Zombie World. Next up are all the back row. I am running 10 of them, which is a lot, but they really do a lot of work. Back row, honestly, especially traps, they win games. They will keep you alive. So, first off, bottomless, self-explanatory, removes a monster, banishes it, what's not to like. Then there's Mirror Force, D-Prison, and Fiendish Chain. All of these are pretty standard and straightforward. I don't really need to explain these 3, but Fiendish Chain is actually very good because I'm running Mist Valley Falcon. So, you activate Fiendish Chain on something, it doesn't even matter what, and then you're able to continuously recycle it with Mist Valley Falcon. So maybe they synchro or they XYZ or something, and Fiendish Chain just stays on the field. Or even maybe you Fiendish Chain something with less than 2,000 attack and you can attack over it. Then you summon your Mist Valley Falcon, you attack. For the cost of it attacking, you return Fiendish Chain to your hand, and then you run over whatever monster you just Fiendish Chained. So you negated an effect, and you basically... It's kind of like having a reoccurring effect failure, which you can use during either player's turn, and it stops the monster from attacking, which I think is pretty superior to that. Finally, in the main deck is Call the Haunted. I was considering running this at 3. I actually was until the 3rd Mizuki came out, and then it kind of felt like it wasn't... It's still good, but it was too much grave special summoning, so 2 was the perfect fit, 3 was too much. And it combos really well with pretty much everything, especially if you special summon Sacred Crane. That's basically +2 again, because you special summon the 1 card, 1 for 1. No, I'm sorry, it's +1, and then you draw a card, so there's the +1. If you need to get something out, you can always special summon Summoner Monk. If you want to start recycling cards, you have Mist Valley Falcon. And there's actually a really cool combo that say your opponent tries to MST this, and you don't have a Sacred Crane in the grave to draw a card off of it, you can actually target Ancient Gear Engineer, and because this card can't be targeted, or it destroys and negates the traps that target it, what happens is you have the Call the Haunted face down, they try to MST it, you chain it, you special summon Ancient Gear Engineer, and then because this is no longer affected by the Call the Haunted, this will just go to the grave, and to the very least you just got a tiny wall, so it'll stick to the field even though they tried to MST it, and I've done that a million times. It's kind of helpful, even if it's just to reduce damage. Then getting onto the extra deck, this is the most important card in the entire extra deck, I would say, because that's what you use for Super Polymerization. It's relatively new, it's not even out in the OCG yet, it's called Dragon Necro. Anything that battles with it has its attack go to 0, and then you get a token with that much monster's original attack. Although, I kind of wish this card wouldn't be destroyed by battle, because there have been a lot of times where someone will have something that's at least 3,000, and this will still die. I mean, I'll get the token, but it dies, which is kind of annoying. Although, it's also really good for baiting out your opponent's cards like Dark Hole or just their monster removal cards, because it's surprisingly, what's the term, you don't really care if it dies, it's expendable. Although it is nice to keep around, it is very expendable, and it's a great bait magnet card. Next up is Felgrand. I'm only using one of these, and you might be asking why, since kind of limited on level 8s, but I have actually used it a number of times. It's actually kept me in the game or won me a duel. It's because triple Dragon Necros, that's, it's a level 8, and then there's also Ancient Gear Dragon, which is an 8, so there have been a number of times where I can make this, and it just, when you're going for game and your opponent is down on cards, having this on the field basically screws them over, because they'll have a really hard time either getting over it, or if they have a monster that they want to use, you can just negate its effect, and chances are it's game from there. Next up is Crazy Box. I try to always run one of these in any deck, because it's just, it's so useful. Even if you're not using it for the effect, maybe your opponent has Skill Drain, you want to make a quick 3,000 attacker, okay, now they have to deal with that. Or if you want to make an offensive wall, obviously this can't attack, but when you summon a monster with 3k attack, it might be hard for them to get over, and it'll kind of stall out until you can draw into something good. And then, of course, there are times where you might want to be a little bit trolly and use its effects. Most of these are actually good. I think it's a 4 out of 6 chance that you'll get something decent. Let's see, 1 is bad, and 6 is bad. So yeah, you have a 4 out of 6 chance of getting a decent effect. I mean, drawing a card that's good, your opponent discards a card that's usually good unless you're playing Dark Worlds. Negate the effect of a face-up card in the field, that's good. Destroy one card in the field, that's also good. So you can come out on top with its effect. Next up is Black Ship of Corn. This is another that I just try to run, because you never know when your opponent's going to summon something that's really hard to get over. Maybe Marshmallow or Spirit Reaper, or maybe you just need to do that extra 1,000 damage. It's good in a lot of situations. Then there's Silent Honor Arc. This is probably my new favorite XYZ. I think a lot of people would think the same thing, just because it doesn't destroy, it doesn't send to the grave, it doesn't do a whole lot of things that most cards can get around. It just eats the monster and overlays it under itself, and then it continues to have a destruction negate effect. So this is just a really good overall card. I like running 2 of them. Next up is Xerofine. This is what I was talking about with the Winged Beasts and their unique XYZs. Because I'm running a significant amount, let's see, what is that? 6 Winged Beasts plus the ability to special summon a bunch of them from the deck or the grave, it makes it really easy to get these out. And this card is absolutely insane. If your opponent has a really big field, especially full of monsters, you can negate their effects, make this thing far bigger than they are, and then just start running them over, and it kind of equalizes the field. And all you need are 2 Winged Beasts to make it, so it's very easy. I'm running 2 for that reason, because they come in handy so often. Next up is Chidori. I'm only running 1, but it is possible to summon them because I'm running triple Mist Valley Falcon, and it is a wind-type Winged Beast, so you can potentially make it. I've made it a few times. And this card is just so dirty. It doesn't have that much attack, but you remove a set card and you remove a face-up card during the same turn while not having to really use any of your cards to do it, so that's just really good. Next up is What did they change its name to? Oh, okay, it's Exciton. What was it called before? It was like Beelzebub or something. I guess this is a little bit better. Rolls off the tongue nicer. I'm only running one of these. I don't see a reason to be running more. As good of a card as it is, it's extremely situational. You have to do it when you have less cards, and you also want to do it when your opponent has more cards on the field. So even if you have less cards, but your opponent has everything in their hand, it's not good. It also doesn't have that much attack. So it's kind of like a Black Rose Dragon, where I like running one of it just in case I want to do a field wipe, because this does win games occasionally. Like, if your opponent puts everything that they have onto the field and they can't stop it, and you have one less card than them or something, you basically end the duel right there. Next up is Symphony de Jin. I think of this as an anti-troll card. Like, if your opponent has a monster with the equipped cards to it, like Power Tool Dragon, and this has happened a number of times, almost enough that it's been kind of surprising. But Power Tool Dragon, it can't be destroyed as long as it has equips on it, or if it would be destroyed, you just destroy equip instead, and it's really annoying. So then you can just flip it face down though, and then it loses all the equips naturally. And then you never know what'll be good when you can flip it face down. As long as it has less than 1800 defense, you can run it over, and it also has that all-important destruction negate effect. Next up is Lava Volcane. I would kind of like to run this card at 3, but I don't have enough room, although it hasn't been highly important, so I guess, yeah, running 2 is just fine, although I would like 3. This card is very good because it sends everything to your grave. This is usually what I like to make first turn if I have Summoner Monk. So I'll use Summoner Monk's effect, discard any spell, special summon Crane, or just Crane. That's a different card. Draw a card off of it, make the chain, and then send something like a Mizuki or a Zephyros to the grave. And then that prepares you for later on when you use your Zombie World, or if you have Call the Haunted, and it just gears you up to start playing and just going plus and stuff. So that's Grimfaced. There are a few other cards in the side deck that I'd like to mention, that these are not actually side deck cards, although you could potentially side them. They're just, if you're looking for different tech cards, I was considering these, they just never made it into the deck. So I'll go really quick with these. We have Minefield Driller to boot. This is just good recycle material for your fields, because you basically have 8 targets technically, with 3 terraforming and then 5 actual fields, so you can just take stuff back. Planet Pathfinder basically goes with it's kind of like the same general gist as Minefield Driller. It just helps you get your fields out onto the field and into your hand and stuff. Then there's Dragoonity Darkspear. You can basically summon this and then automatically special summon one of your winged beasts. So you can summon Falcon, or Zephyros, or Crane. Crane is actually really good because then you draw a card. I'm actually still considering this one for myself. Next up is Marionette Might. This is just good because of Zombie World. If you have Zombie World, you take control of one of their monsters. That's, all around very good, although I never really saw it as necessary. Then there's also Book of Life and Dragon's Mirror. I want to group these 3 together. That includes Marionette Might, because I thought, okay, if I'm using Zombie World, I might as well be using cards that take advantage of zombies, right? But when I tried using, I never used Might, but I used both these in Tangent, and it just didn't feel necessary. All you really need for the Zombie World to combo with is Super Polymerization and Gear Town, and that is just enough. It's the perfect number. Then, okay, Book of Life. Even though it banishes a monster from your opponent's grave and special summons anything from your grave, I think it's kind of outclassed by Call the Haunted, because you can use this in more situations than you can Book of Life. This is a trap, so you can use it during your opponent's turn, and I think that beats out being able to banish something. Then finally is Dragon's Mirror. This would just be to help get out Dragon Necro, but with triple Super Polymerizations, no way to recycle these, it just wasn't that great. Again, this is better than Dragon's Mirror because you can use it during your opponent's turn, and it has that all-important can't be responded to effect. So this just never made it in, but these are all good cards to consider if you're looking for tech cards. So if you enjoyed this video, please comment, like, subscribe, and stay brutal.